Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Jesse White, Illinois Secretary of State, and I want Marty Levinson to know that I'm cutting all the waste in the Secretary of State's office.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 2 is 4, 4 4 6. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on, honey, don't you wanna go back to the lemon line?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. Over 250,000 shows watched. Thank you so much. Don't you people have anything better to do? You can go to our website at ntnm.org. You can catch all the links on YouTube. We're going to really get into elections time, big time. We've already had a bunch of judges. If you're watching the show, and we know lots of you were fans of our next guest, who are running for judge, who have retained the services, you are invited. I am accepting almost anybody running for judge as long as you've got decent qualifications and you're not, wanted on several warrants. So we're trying to introduce everybody to everybody, okay? We try to be a good clearinghouse that way. Community Policing, caps24.org, thanks to Commander Waldera, Sergeant Bob Kane, Zelidith Moore, and Mike Stahula for all the good stuff they're doing. Community Policing meetings for West Rogers Park take place on the second Thursday at 7 o'clock. The October and November meetings will be at Warren Park. Hopefully the November meeting will have free pizza. It will be kosher, which means that if you're a Muslim, you can eat it too. It'll be veggie. So if you've got health concerns, well, I guess you can do veggie unhealthy too, but we'll try not to. Too much anyway. It is a pleasure to introduce you to election lawyer extraordinaire, James P. Nally. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on, Avi.
First of all, thank you, and I'm glad. Thank you for gracing us. Now, there are changes in the election law this year, aren't there?
Yeah, there was an omnibus election bill that was signed by Governor Quinn on July 29th, and there are a number of changes that affects both campaign finance and then also some ballot issues as well. So, for instance, now the threshold where you are going to be required to file a D1 organizational form and file reports with the State Board of Elections as a political committee is raised from $3,000 to $5,000. So until you raise or spend $5,000 now, you will not have to file a committee report with the State Board of Elections, which makes sense. There were a lot of these little committees, and somebody would be running for the local school board or library board or something in their town, and these people would, obviously not be spending any significant amount of money. But you know what? $3,000 was pretty easy to hit. You order some lawn signs, you do a mailing, you're at $3,000. So the $5,000 threshold will help screen out some of these smaller committees and not put the burden on people who want to run for these very local offices that generally don't pay anything. They're doing it because of their civic interest in doing good in their community. And these were always the committees, because they didn't, a lot of people, it was the first time they'd run for any kind of an office. So these were the committees who would forget to file reports, and then they'd get a notice and they'd have to come in. And it's just I think it's an excellent idea to encourage grassroots democracy and not tie people up with a lot of red tape until they're raising or spending a fairly significant amount of money.
Yeah, and even 5,000 these days. I mean, when I think about a mailing, it better be a pretty closed area to do a mailing for $5,000.
Right. I mean, the $3,000 threshold is 15 or 20 years old, and even if it had been indexed for inflation, we'd probably be at least $10,000 now as the minimum. But I think that it's a good thing because you don't want to discourage people, and just because they don't have the wherewithal to spend a lot of time studying the election code and the reporting requirements, you don't want to find them, suddenly in hot water. And a lot of these committees would end up owing more in fines than they ever raised, in support of the candidacy. So it was really kind of a draconian situation with a lot of these. And it should help somewhat in these smaller races to encourage people who want to run for a local school board or a park district or a library board, and not have to be dealing with the red tape of forming a committee and filing reports and all that. So I think that's a positive thing.
When is the filing deadline this year?
Well,
Or when are you supposed to file? When can you get started?
September 3 was the opening of circulation of petitions, and this year, for people running in the party primary, which will be March 18th of 2014, the filing period for petitions begins November the 25th and ends December the 2nd. And keep in mind, that's going to be truncated because Thanksgiving happens to fall that week.
Oh, wow.
So the State Board of Elections has already sent out a notice, about the closure for the holiday. Now, in reality, most people file the first day or the last day. You don't get that many people filing midweek. But, anybody who would have some strategy of filing in the middle of the week, just be aware you might show up and they're not open.
Yeah, because people either want to try to be first or try to be last. And for those people who don't know, the jockeying to be last can be interesting.
Well, here's the thing. There are studies out there that indicate that once there are 4 or more candidates, some advantage is realized by being first or last. Generally speaking, people, if there's a couple of names, they'll look at both names and decide what candidate that they want to support. But when you have offices where, particularly like a judicial office or water rec, where you might have 10 people running, there's kind of a psychological approach that takes hold where people often will see a long list of names and will vote for either the first name they see or the last name that they see. So people will be down there the first day, first hour. The rules of the Board of Elections are that anybody who's in line when the office opens on the first day for filing is given a ticket, and when you get to the counter, so even if you don't get to the counter for an hour because of the line, they stamp your paper as being filed at 9 o'clock.
Did it used to be that way?
It's been that way for quite some time. And then they hold a lottery. So everybody who's in line when the doors open, even if you don't get to the counter to file because of the line until later, you show them the ticket and they'll stamp it. And then there's a lottery later to determine amongst the people who filed first day, first hour, who gets the top spot. And that's the way it will be this time as well.
Now, I've been reading things, but, you're the expert. There was a lot of jockeying for last at one time. I believe the law has changed, but for people who don't know, if you don't file, like if 5 o'clock's the deadline, you really got to do it at a certain point in time. You can't do it at 5:01.
Right.
So if 2 people were in line to file last, it's like playing chicken.
And that's been addressed because
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you about.
it was like playing chicken, and for those people who wanted to get the last spot, they would be watching, and everybody would be trying to beat the clock, and at 4:59 try to be the last one to file. Because at the State Board of Elections, their rule is at 5 o'clock their employees walk away from the counter. So if you've not filed, if there's 5 people in line and it's 2 minutes till 5, and you don't make it up there to file, you're out of luck. And you circulated all those petitions, and you may have thousands of valid signatures on your petitions, and because you decided to play chicken with it, guess what? You're not even going to be on the ballot. So the new rule is that anybody who files at the end of the day, the last hour on the last day, there's a similar type of a lottery for the last spot. So you will be in a lottery if you're trying to be the first person on the ballot or if you're trying to be the last one.
I like that, actually.
Well,
It's
the
scary,
statistical
that
studies
playing
that
chicken thing.
Yeah, it never made sense, and I remember.
By the way, isn't it the government running things? Why should it make sense?
Well, they've addressed this, though. You got to give them credit. They saw that this was a problem. I had an experience where I was over there a couple of election cycles ago, and there were 2 people vying to run for the Water Reclamation District, and it was the last day, last hour, and they both wanted the last spot, and they're both kind of standing there doing a stare down, and one of them finally, about 5 minutes till 5, reaches into a bag and pulls out a bunch of petitions and puts them on the counter, and they get stamped, and so the person who was waiting says, aha, I win. So at 3 minutes to 5, they put their paper up there, and they get stamped at 3 minutes to 5. And then the person who had pulled the stuff out of the bag originally at 5 minutes till 5 reaches in and pulls out another stack of paper. And it turns out that they had been filing somebody else's papers for them, so they put those up at 5 to 5. The guy then who filed his, thinking he'd be last, files a couple minutes later, and then this person pulls out their paperwork and ends up getting the last spot on the ballot because they waited till 2 minutes to 5.
Wow.
And faked the other person out. And I think to avoid that kind of gamesmanship is why they've come up with this new solution. So now there's a lottery.
Actually, that's admirable. That's really clever.
It was clever, yeah. It was definitely clever, and the shouting match between these two was unbelievable after it happened. But you know, in reality, it kind of lent itself to those kind of games being played. So from this point forward, there'll be lotteries for both the first position and the last position on the ballot. And statistically, you know, there's studies, and of course they're only as good as the data that they collect, but there seems to be kind of a consensus that being first on the ballot could net you anywhere from 3 to 5% of the vote.
Which in a tight race can be the difference.
And the same thing, the last is not as advantageous as being the first person on the ballot, but it still is worth somewhere between, say, 1 to 3% of the vote. And if you've got a multiple candidate field, you know, getting 1 or 2% more than the other candidate may be the margin of victory. So as silly as it is that people may be elected just because they're fortunate enough to get a good ballot position, that's the way things do happen from time to time.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. Now, one of the other things I was reading too, and once again, I'm reading some of this on Facebook, and even though, you know, the majority of my Facebook friends, I haven't met a lot of them, but that's okay. I got 873 friends. But basically, I'm on there for politics. So if you want to friend me, Avi Myers, Facebook, be political. If you want to, like, hi, how are you? Let's get together for a beer. Well, you know, I'm not adverse to it 100%, but the point is, I'm not on Facebook for that. I do business there. That's what I use it for. Is the limits for aldermen doubling?
Yes, they are doubling, but again, you know, they're kind of making a big deal out of that. This last election cycle, Avi, the rewards in the city of Chicago were 50 signatures would get you on the ballot.
Wow.
Because it's all based on a percentage of the turnout. So in previous elections. So it's not nearly as draconian as it sounds. It will make it a little bit tougher, but I wouldn't envision there'd be any ward, even the largest wards in the city of Chicago, I can't envision there'd be any ward where you'd need more than maybe 600 signatures or 700 signatures tops.
No, that's 600, in other words, but then you need double, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the minimum is what it is,
Yeah.
but you always want to come in with a cushion because invariably, not every signature you get is going to be a good one.
No, that's definitely the case. Now, let me ask you, in terms of a percentage of the election, if you have a runoff election, is that about, which one counts, the regular election or the runoff election for the number of signatures?
They do it based on the last, usually it's based on the last general election. So it would be the higher turnout is usually in the initial election.
Right.
There's always a drop off in a runoff.
Yeah, because you don't have the mayor's race and...
Right. I mean, in Chicago, you know, Chicago's a strictly nonpartisan election system. Yeah. At least legally, at least on a legal basis. So everybody runs without a party label affixed to their name.
Yeah, by the way, for those of you who aren't old enough, I still remember the first time I ever voted for mayor in the city of Chicago. And, you know, those were in the days of the machine before they went to the, you know, you pulled
The levers, oh yeah.
So the first lever was, you know, like Mayor, City of Chicago, Democrat Richard J. Daley, and the second line was Republican, danger 50,000 votes.
Well, effectively, that's what they still are because, you know, the Democratic Party dominates local politics. And again, although the aldermen and the city officials don't run, I don't think there's, other than maybe in 2 wards in the city, there's really anybody who really goes out of their way to point out that, you know, even though I'm running nonpartisan, I'm really a Republican. It's just the way it is.
Even though I choose to be neither, I only registered Republican once, and that's because I was a Republican election judge for Project LEAP. And in order to do that, you know, I had to register as a Republican. But, you know, for those of you who get upset at me with Jewish Chicago, you know, for endorsing all these Republicans, I'm a registered Democrat. And always probably will be, too. And I still lean, I shouldn't say this to you right-wingers, I still would like to lean that way. The trouble is you guys are leaning too far to the left for me. So, you know, like, stay in the middle. The middle's a good place to be. I mean, common sense It's like Jewish Chicago says, I believe in practical solutions for real world problems, and I don't believe in dogma and ideology for these things. I mean, that's the stuff that gets you Lenin and Marx, and I'm not talking about Groucho and John Lennon either.
Well, it's also what gets us a gridlock in Washington, because things have become so polarized now, and the way it works, it's kind of a winner-take-all when they're drawing these election districts throughout the various states. So, if the Republicans win a state, then they draw the map the next time and, guarantee that there'll be a majority Republican legislators. And the same thing with the Democrats. Both parties do it the same way. But the problem you have now is you've got a Congress that's gridlocked and nothing gets done. Some people think that's a good idea, by the way, but...
Well, by the way, you know what? I wish government would do less, and I like it when it goes back and forth Democrat and Republican, but you can't just not do nothing. And you can't have all these crises coming up.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, now, whether you think it's good or whether it's bad, nothing is getting done because...
Yeah, very much so. We're in the... I consider this the 13th year of the two worst presidents we've ever had in this country. And, I still don't understand how anybody ever voted for any of those two.
Well, and Congress is really the bottleneck, because whoever's president, with a couple of exceptions, they've generally, all the presidents the last probably 20 years, with a couple of years of exceptions, have faced a Congress not of their party, whoever they were. So, where at least one of the houses was controlled by somebody other than the party of the president.
Yeah, but the thing is this, that in the past people have worked together, and also once upon a time, you actually had liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. So, it wasn't that the Democrats were dogmatically left and the Republicans were dogmatically right. I mean, a little more so. It's like the Democrats were the party of the people, the Republicans were the party of business. Now, both are parties of business, just different businesses.
Well, the real thing is that in many of the states now, including Illinois, the elections in a lot of districts are decided in the primary. And the primary voters who come out are the core base of that party. So those are the people who have to be appealed to in order to win a primary. What that means, though, is that you have to often go to one extreme or the other, depending what party you're running in.
That's true. Because
and then when you get to Washington, you're committed to certain views where there is no middle.
Yeah, you know what? I get it from both sides when I go, like how can you be for this person because he's so this, that, or the other thing? Well, he's being practical. He's not being dogmatic, or she's being, well, these days more she's than he's.
And Avi, you've had dozens and dozens of elected officials on your program, and these people are decent people. They're people that you'd like to sit down and have a beer with. They've got ideas. They've got good ideas. But when people can't sit down and compromise, you get these situations.
No, and you know what? The other thing too, Jesse White was on last week. One of the things we talked, I would vote for the guy for president because he gets people to sit down and talk to each other. And not only that, he tries to be proactive in finding solutions to problems. And not only that, the guy's actually got the guts to sing on the ear when he's wrong, as opposed to some of you elected officials, and you know who I'm talking about, who I don't invite on the show anymore. Well, you can't talk about this, that, or the other thing. Well, like, hey, you're our representative in Congress or whatever. We can't talk about honest stuff, and you're an elected official. I don't want you on the show. But by the same token, a lot of people are scared to come on because, I'm not bought and paid for. I mean, this is a cheap suit. Come on, I didn't even get it cleaned. And by the way, one of the guys I really want on, and I just wished him a happy birthday, is Daniel Biss, who I think is a brilliant guy.
Yeah, he's a mathematician. He's a numbers guy. I know he's very involved now in working on the pension issue down in Springfield. And
yeah, and he's got some terrific solutions, and I don't look at him bad because Madigan picked up his proposal. So, I mean, but part of the problem is with these people is when you've got to vote down the party line, like on a lot of important issues, you can be as independent. And I'm not talking about you, Daniel. I want you on the show, please. But, like a lot of these people, they can talk all they want. They can have the best heart in the world. But if they have to do what leadership tells them to do, and leadership isn't good, it's a problem.
Well, I've said it before. Your program, you invite people from all over the place and with all different types of views. And it's a healthy thing. Hear what people, you may not always agree with them, but hear what people have to say, hear what their ideas are, because nobody has a monopoly on good ideas.
No, absolutely. I think it's extremely, extremely important. And remind me to tell you Ralph Abernathy's story that Jesse White told me, by the way, but we'll save that for off the air because we still have other issues to talk about. Now, in terms of what offices are up for election in the upcoming election?
This is going to be a very busy. It's a non-presidential year, but we have the U.S. Senate, we have the governor of the state, we have all the statewide offices, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Comptroller, Attorney General. So all the Illinois statewide offices, and then on the county level, there's the county clerk, the county treasurer, the county commissioners are all up this time, and there are new county commissioner districts. So for those of you who are interested in that, make sure you check because your county commissioner may have changed or your district may have changed from the last time, because based on just as the city was redistricted by wards under the this one man, one vote edict of the U.S. Supreme Court, after every census, the district boundaries need to be redrawn so that every district has roughly the same population, so everybody's vote has roughly the same value.
And by the way, for those of you watching, I have two favorite county commissioners. And one of them will be at the next taping. It'll be on in the next week or two. That's Larry Sufferton. By the way, my other is Bridget Gaynor. I really like her. I think she's a terrific lady. Really tries hard to do good. Very intelligent, very well schooled. And John Fritchie, you're invited too. You keep saying you're going to come, you never come. Well, he never really made an appointment, so I can't knock him. But I love his stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, and well, all those offices are going to be up this cycle as well.
By the way, he's got some really cool beer sleeves that say to vote for him.
Oh well, there you go. You got to know your demographics and make sure you reach out to everybody.
I don't know hey, that's why I like Terry so much. I still have some of his sleeves.
Well, and then of course we're going to have another large number of judges running. There are, as we speak, there are 10 county-wide vacancies that are going to be on the ballot, and there may be a couple more based on retirements and whatnot. There are actually 3 appellate seats up, which is pretty unusual, that many appellate judges, because the appellate court, the state is divided into 5 districts for the appellate court, and Cook County is its own district, and is the largest district, and there's about 25 judges on the court there. So you've got 3 out of 25, which is fairly significant. It's over 10% of the seats.
It is. We've already had 2 candidates on the show. We've had Marguerite Quinn, who's one of my favorite people, and we've had Don Sampin, who's very intelligent, very nice guy. And Sheldon Harris, he's not I believe he's running.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know he's serving on the appellate court currently. I believe he was going to run. I haven't heard for sure.
Right, he wasn't slated. Well, part of the thing for those of you, I didn't get to the judicial slating, frankly, and I mean, guys like you just let me know that I'm probably wasting my time because the action doesn't happen at the slating. I mean, that's kind of like a dog and pony show.
Well,
I mean, the decisions are made prior.
There's pre-slating, and people are, with the party, anybody who's interested in being slating has to send in their resume and, letter of interest and stuff well in advance. So those things are reviewed by everybody a long time before the actual slating is scheduled. So I'm sure most people come up with their own opinion on who they want to support by the time slating rolls around.
Well, one of the things I'm alluding to, Jack Lahan was writing about this, and I also believe that Mark Brown wrote about this also. I think he wrote about this point, and I really do miss Abdon Pialish since he's moved to the dark side. But
he's the assistant revenue director now for the state. So
listen, and you know what? One thing I'll say about him, he's a dead set, honest, good person.
He is, and he was a very good reporter because he treated the stories.
I thought he was the best local reporter we had.
I agree. He was always fair to people. Hopefully that's one of the reasons he's in government, and you'll see some improvements based on the fact that he's there.
A lot of people don't understand. The press isn't always honest and fair, and he's somebody who was. And by the way, it's obvious what his politics are now, and I kind of get a hint of it from before from talking to him. But when he was reporting, it didn't show up in his reporting.
No, he was always very fair to people and tried to get both sides of every story.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you watch CNN or what I like to call MFNBC or Fox News, I mean, hey, those guys come with an agenda.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, too, is the sub-circuit judges are up, and a lot of the sub-circuits are going to have more than one vacancy.
Right. Now, I want to just get back to Sheldon Harris for a minute,
yeah.
who I think will be on the show. Part of the slating process, there's 3 questions they asked. And question number 2 is, do you agree to abide by the decision of the party and not run if you're not slated.
Right.
So that becomes a problem for some people, and that's why some people didn't show up for the slating, because they knew they weren't going to get slated and didn't want to make the promise. But it is politics, and not everybody keeps their promises.
Well, that's true. On the other side of the coin, though, is if you have a party, you have to, a party is based on discipline, and, if the vote goes one way and we're going to endorse this person or that person, if you're on the team, you're expected to be a team player. So that's true of political parties or athletic teams, for that matter.
No, for sure. Sub-circuits.
Yeah, and sub-circuits are also on the ballot. Some will have no openings, some will have multiple. The 9th sub-circuit, where you live, Avi, and I live, which is, kind of the lakefront, Rogers Park, Evanston, Skokie. It goes up into parts of Wilmette, Glenview, Morton Grove. There are 3 vacancies as we speak, which is a pretty high number.
Yeah, and thank God for that, because that'll be good advertising for Jewish Chicago.
Right. It's always good to have competition.
Yeah, the 8th and the 9th are always do the best for me.
Yeah, now the 8th, interestingly, has no vacancies as we speak.
Aw.
But, you never know. I mean, somebody may decide to retire in the next few weeks, and the vacancy would come, come into play. The 8th is always an interesting one, because there are more lawyers per capita in the 8th sub-circuit. That sub-circuit starts kind of downtown and pretty much runs up the lakefront till it bumps into the 9th around Edgewater.
It actually gets
Rogers
close
Park.
to Chinatown, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes that far south, and then it runs all the way up north to Edgewater, Rogers Park, and it depending on the boundary on the west, it could be Ashland, it could be a little further west, a little further east. But that one is always interesting, because when there are vacancies there are more lawyers who live in that that district.
Yeah, Lakeshore Drive.
Per capita than any. You've got Lincoln Park, you've got the lakefront and Gold Coast in that area. So invariably, there are always multiple candidates running in those races because of that. But the 9th sub-circuit has a fair share of attorneys living there too. So I think all 3 of these vacancies will be well contested.
No, I already know of a number of people that are running, and everybody running in the 9th sub-circuit is cordially invited. The ones I've been able to contact and the ones I know about, I'm already trying to contact, and I've already hit some people on.
Well, and Avi, we're filming here a little bit earlier than the show's going to run. By the time this show is running, you'll have a very good idea of who's out there, because that will be about a month into the petition process, and the word will be out of who's circulating petitions and what vacancy they're circulating for.
Yeah, out of curiosity, how many do you need in the sub-circuit? How many do you need countywide?
You need 1,000 in a sub-circuit, and you need the number in countywide is again based on a prior election. This time around for circuit judge, it's 3,263.
So, yeah, you need an organization, because you need double that, really.
The sub-circuits are easier in one way because you need fewer signatures, but keep in mind, your signers have to be in the sub-circuit. If you're running countywide, you need more signatures, but you have the whole county in terms of getting signatures. So,
and, if you happen to have the right election lawyer, him being one of them, you can get knocked off the ballot or knock somebody else off the ballot.
Well, I always tell people, there's nobody in the history of the world who's turned in perfect petitions in terms of signatures. So you want to make sure you get the technical stuff right in terms of the wording and the things that the documents that need to be filed. And I always tell people, whatever the minimum is, your goal should be to get 3 times whatever the minimum is.
Yeah, listen, the rules are the rules. If you hit a homer and you don't step on second base, it don't count.
Well, and people talk about the rules and there's so many signatures. And I understand that, but the other side of the coin is the courts have upheld these signature requirements, and the federal courts have said signature requirements show a modicum of support in the community. In order to get a couple thousand people to sign your petition, you've got to work, you've got to be somewhat organized, you've got to have a network of friends or family who are willing to go out and get the signatures, and you got to get people to sign for you. Because if all it took was to sign a paper saying I'm running for this office, you'd go in and talk about ballots. I mean, there'd be bedsheet ballots. These ballots would run on and on for
it'd be ridiculous.
Pages.
At this point, Mickey's hands are really there. So if people would like to contact you, James P. Nally, Election Lawyer Extraordinaire, aka Jim. Want to give people contact information?
Sure. I can be reached at 312-422-5560.
Want to thank my entire tech crew, Sonny Hirsch. See you next week. Hi, Andy. How you doing? Be well. Bye-bye.